Hello, Easton, and welcome to the Rabbi's Roundtable. I'm Rabbi Peter Hyman, Rabbi at Temple B'nai Israel, and we welcome you to the Rabbi's Roundtable. Have an interesting and informative and engaging show this afternoon. Two folk who are profoundly important leaders in our community. Corey Pack, Talbot County Council member, community leader who needs no formal introduction. Corey, thank you for being here. I appreciate your time. And Richard Potter. Richard, of course, is the president of the NAACP. And Richie, thank you for being here as well.
Thank you for having me.
No, my pleasure. Thanks for taking the time. I did want to talk a little bit about something that I think, not only I think, but is an important issue to begin with, and that is the whole question of the Talbot Boy statue and the moving of the Confederate monument. I just need to hear from you guys for a lot of reasons, the thought, and also to make it clear that nobody's asking to destroy this, just to move it. And I think there's a difference between destroying something and moving it. So, Corey, I'll start with you. Let's just have a little discussion about this.
Sure. Well, once again, Rabbi, thank you for inviting me back to your show. I think the last time we were together was pre-COVID at the studio there.
That's
I think
correct.
before the last election period, you had me in to speak to you and your guests. So. Yeah. It's always a pleasure to be back at the Rabbi's Roundtable.
Glad to have it.
Thank you. I don't think there's any secret, at least it shouldn't be any secret to any American, the transitional stage that we're going through as a nation. People are meant to evolve over time, evolve in our thinking, evolve in our behavior, and evolve in the way that we interact with one another. And many parts of the country have made that change, have made that transition, has made that a step of evolution. But it appears here in Talbot County, we have yet to take that step, and which is to remove those last signs and symbols of the Confederacy and what it stood for from public grounds here in Talbot County. I agree with you, Rabbi. I never said destroy the Confederate statue. Since my position as it is now today is to remove it to a location better suited for historical purposes, where people can come and look upon it and have discussions about it, but to be seated in a prominent place on the courthouse lawn outside of the county courthouse. I do believe in my heart of hearts that is not the appropriate place for a statue commemorating the Confederacy and all that it fought for and all that it stood for.
I tend to agree. But Richie, you want to respond as well?
Sure. I'll go back to when the NAACP approached the council in 2015. One of the recommendations that we brought to the council was to remove the statue from its present location and find somewhere more appropriate for it to be placed. Nowhere did we say that we wanted this monument destroyed, because again, we know if we don't learn our history, we're doomed to repeat it. So we want the monument to be placed somewhere more appropriate. But again, we thought and we know that the courthouse lawn is not the place for it. The message that the Confederate monument sends on a courthouse ground is conflicting. It's conflicting messages, and it's a symbolism of oppression for African Americans who have to walk past that courthouse to do business in that courthouse. Now, when we think of a courthouse in the sense of the United States of America, we think of being able to go to a courthouse and get a fair and just trial. How is it that I can get a fair trial with a Confederate monument and a Confederate flag on the courthouse lawn, knowing that that's a monument that depicts me and every other African American belonging in chains, bondage, and oppressed. So it's very conflicting information, and that's the reason why we want that monument removed off the courthouse lawn.
I fully understand, and as I have said in other places, statues and monuments convey messages very powerfully.
Absolutely.
It may be silent, but the silence isn't a lack of meaning, you know, and you know, walking by that. And I agree. The names on that statue, I know people who are descendants of those names. You know, you don't want to do anything to be offensive, but you want to make a statement that is intelligent and wrestles with the question of how do you deal with hard history.
Right.
And I fully agree that and it should be moved. It's not an attempt to offend anybody. Right. It's put the message in its proper place.
And if I may, Rabbi,
sure,
to that point regarding those 84 names on the base of that statue, and look, I admit it, and I've apologized to Richard, to members of NAACP, to members of the public for my position back in 2015. I was wrong in my thinking, I was wrong in my analysis, and I was wrong in my conclusion, voting to keep the statue in place. And we need to learn from our mistakes as people. Again, we need to evolve in our thinking as people. And I have taken that self-examination, and I had to admit that I was wrong in my position back in 2015. But let me say this, and my words have come back to me so many times over the last year or so. But you know, I did say that we don't know the individual reasons why those 84 men went to fight. And really, Rabbi, the reasons why they went to fight really doesn't matter. Whether they went to fight because the guy at the street was going, whether they went to fight because they thought Maryland was too oppressive to the local towns and municipalities, whether they went to fight because they truly believed in what the Confederacy stood for. The reasons why doesn't really matter. What does matter is the overarching cause by which they fought under. And Correct. They fought under that banner of the Confederacy.
Correct.
A people and a government that was treasonous, a government that was of insurrection. You look at the Confederate Constitution, it talks about the continued enslavement of Black people. And it's worded right in their Constitution. So there is no misgivings, there is no fallacy as to what the Confederacy stood for. So if there are 84 reasons why, really doesn't matter at this point. Right. It really doesn't matter. What does matter is the cause and banner by which they fought under, and to preserve, I may add, and to preserve.
Correct. I fully agree. Richie, you want to comment? And then I'll.
Yeah, you know, I had a conversation with someone from the other side who wanted to bring that up, to say that those men didn't understand what they were fighting for. They didn't, you know, they didn't know, and it was multiple reasons why they were fighting. And I said to him, but those 84 names on there, all of those men were involved in the infancy stages to the completion stages of that monument. But what they did know is that they were erecting, or they were going to put that stock figure of that boy with the Confederate flag wrapped around him. They knew that. And we know that factual due to articles in the Star Democrat.
Yeah.
With that Confederate flag going up there, they had to know the impact of that flag and the meaning of that flag to the African American community at that time.
Go ahead. Sorry.
To me, they understood what that Confederate flag meant to African Americans. But they were okay with putting their dollars behind erecting a monument with the Confederate flag. Yeah. So with that notion alone, again, it was there to oppress a group of people, to let them know you have your place in our society, but your place is where we tell you it is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what they wanted to maintain.
Yep.
Put it on a courthouse lawn. That's significant. That's very significant.
I think it sends a message. And, the argument about states' rights, I find that to be, well, I can't say it on the air.
Well, even that argument of states' rights has been around ever since the founding of the country. After the Revolutionary War in 1776. You had the Hamilton, the Alexander Hamilton side of government, yep. and you also had the other competing side of government. And look, you can have a belief in a strong state government without being oppressive.
Well,
you can have a strong state government without being so lopsided in your justice that you completely eliminate a body of people from participation.
Well, states' rights in this case was the right of the state to continue slavery, an oppressive, despicable political deception, decision. That's not what we think when we hear states' rights. It's not about that. It's different. That was the smokescreen. So
so you have the Jefferson side fighting for states' rights, and the Hamilton side fighting for a larger, more centralized federal government. Yep. And again, I don't think we need to look any further than the Compromise of 1877. I've been saying this repeatedly for the last couple of weeks. If after their defeat, the Confederacy truly wanted unity, they truly wanted to be reunited back into the Republic, reunited back into the United States of America, they would have not have issued those 5 demands to President Hayes,
yep.
2 of which were more offensive in that remove all the Northern troops remaining in the South. And by the way, let us treat our Black folk any way we see fit, right, without Northern interference. That told you right there what their mindset was, what their intentions were. And for the next 100 years through Jim Crow and other injustices, we saw what happened. Correct. So when people try to paint this narrative of unity, we have been at our states' rights versus a more centralized federal government since our founding.
Yep.
But we have to be allowed to sometimes agree to disagree, but work together for the betterment of all.
Absolutely. Richie?
Absolutely. I want to speak on this whole unity monument that I'm reading in the paper. You can't bring about unity to something that has been so oppressive to people and has meant to demoralize, bring scare tactics to people. There's no way that you can modify that existing monument and say and then reclassify it as unity. The only way that we can do that is through a reconciliation process. 1, we have to acknowledge the fault that's there. 2, we have to eradicate it. And then 3, we have to be willing to bring people of different backgrounds, different mindsets to the table to discuss the creation of something new, and also telling the authentic history of the Civil War as it relates to Talbot County without it being offensive to any one group or people. That's the challenge that we're faced with. That's how we should move forward, because again, this is a very contentious topic within our community, but we should also be looking at how we can create a sense of community and a sense of belonging for all.
Yeah, I fully agree. And again, as I said, this is hard history. And one of the things I've never quite understood is, for me, as I studied this, and of course, as I matured and understood things better, ultimately, this was an act of sedition. Mm-hmm. This was an attempt, not only politically and maybe geographically, but ideologically and philosophically. It was a total break with what we as Americans believe our country is built on. And, you know, we are now in the 21st century. It's time, kids. You know?
I mean, it was a coup d'etat in every sense of the word, you know. What those states did in revolt to the Union can't be, in my opinion, it can't be put in any other terms but a insurrection and a revolt or a rebellion against the Union. They drew up their own articles of Confederacy. They had their own flag. They named their own capital. They selected their own president and cabinet. They printed their own currency. What would you call it if not a coup?
That's right. And what also frightens me was what we saw on January 6th.
Right.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And what flag did they take with them on January the 6th?
That's correct.
Yeah.
You know, I that's a whole different issue, and I don't want to get, but still, I can't help but think, what's the mindset, and why? Well, anyway.
But January 6th has been in the making for over the last 100 years. It wasn't just Trump that brought about January the 6th.
Correct.
He was the match for the gasoline that had already been spilled on the ground.
Right.
You know,
sure.
Again, we launched after 1877 into the Jim Crow era, but also into the manipulative and the distortion of the Lost Cause movement. And those teachings of the Lost Cause movement went into our educational system, it went into our political system, it went into our social system, and it has been reverberating for the last 100 years. And this distortion of lies, look, a lie can do no other good but bring about destruction. You know, a lie can bring no other good but destruction. So,
correct.
You know, when you have these lies being told, passed down like fables from one generation to the next, we see on January the 6th, the combination of that. The former president had a lot to do with the lighting of that, but the gasoline had been spilled a long time ago.
I agree. Richie, any comment?
No, I would wholeheartedly agree with that. You know, I think that as Corey mentioned, that the former president definitely took and threw the gasoline on what was already burning. Yeah. And they, you know, on January the 6th, they felt that they were doing the right thing because they had the commander-in-chief telling them what to do. So, you know, they assumed that they were doing the right thing. And it's unfortunate.
Yep. Oh, absolutely. And let's talk a little bit about the Lost Cause movement, since Corey, you brought it up. What about what's going on in Talbot County?
Well, I think, you know, we talk about how lies are perpetuated and how lies get extended over periods of time, over generations. And what we see with this narrative of this unity statue, in my opinion, is just another continuation of the Lost Cause movement, is to paint a narrative that's not accurate, that's not true. As Richard said earlier, you know, if you really want to do a unity statue, number one, let's deal with the elephant that's in the room, and let's address the first offense, which is the Confederate statue and where it's currently placed. Let the council deal with that first, and we've already have a resolution in place that will allow any group to bring to the council a suggestion on another monument, and we'll certainly take that up. So if there are groups who want to have a symbolic unity statue, then that group should be a representative of the community at large, should it not? Should not you have people on there from different backgrounds who bring different understandings of the situation, and let them have those conversations? But when you again try to cloak the Confederacy around this grand old antebellum time of purity and innocence, and we didn't really do anything wrong. And then you try to say, well, after the battles, you know, in the years that preceded, former soldiers would get together and they would drink and slap each other on the back and tell war stories. Well, look, me and my college roommates, we do that every September. It's called homecoming. And so that still doesn't negate what the Confederacy stood for, because a bunch of guys sit around and drink bourbon together. Yeah. It might be a nice get together, but still, we're missing the main point.
I fully agree. Richie?
And again, you know, when I did the research in 2015, it almost seems like deja vu all over again, because this was the same tactic that they took. The newspapers of the 1900s stated that they were going to do a monument that was dedicated to the Civil War, with the Union soldiers being represented. But then later on, when you're doing the research, you find out that the Union side did not come up with their portion of the money, so they went along with the statue from a one-sided perspective. But then again, you look at that, you look at who fought for the Union, which were mainly African-American men who came home from the war. They didn't have the financial resources to dedicate to monuments. They were coming back trying to solidify and build their families back up again from when they were off to war. So again, it almost reminds me of the same thing. Here we are back talking about a unity statue, yet there's no group that's going to come forth with a plan. And then I'm assuming that the council member who brought it is using that as a stall tactic so that this whole thing dissipates, and then we're still left with the Confederate monument still standing. We don't know how much money it's going to take to do the modification, even if a modification can be done. So there's a lot of unanswered questions that has to be answered. You know, I saw a copy of the draft resolution where it stated that they were going to direct the county finance office to create a fund for community members and Maryland citizens to donate to this. If you don't come up with the money in a reasonable time, what's going to happen to the present monument? Well, it's going to stay where it is. So again, all of this is completely stall tactics. I want the council to come to a point where we can have open and honest dialogue about this. How do we move forward in the spirit of humanity and in the spirit of our beloved community to address this difficult issue?
Well, I agree with that. You know, I agree wholeheartedly. I think, you know, you have to do first things first, and the first order of business would be for council to agree to move the Confederate statue from the courthouse lawn into another location. Once that plot of land is clear, you know, if groups want to sit down and talk amongst each other and bring forth a plan, you know, I would be glad to hear it. You know, but you know, this one-sided effort, which again to me speaks more of the cloaking of this lost cause movement, because you're still trying to sell me a bad bill of goods. You're still trying to wrap the Confederacy around the flag and try to tell me that it's okay. What happened on November the 6th, January the 6th was disgusting. And just because you paint your face red, white, and blue and throw an American flag around your shoulders as you're storming the Capitol doesn't make you a patriot. Correct. I'm sorry.
That's correct.
And that's the same thing that goes here. You know, you can't cloak the Confederacy any other way than what it stood for, what it meant, and try to do anything other than that is just a lie.
Terribly important, powerful, deep issues that we must address, not only as a community, but as a nation. And if I'm not mistaken, isn't this the last Confederate monument in Maryland to be
on public ground?
On public ground, is from what I've never researched that person myself. Richard may have. I've been told that by a number of sources, and so I'm gonna believe that that's the case. And look, when you look at that resolution, it talks about the Maryland Trust and trying to bring public dollars here from the state of Maryland do another Confederate statue, no matter how you try to slice it. I'm of the opinion you're not going to get the Maryland government to put money into a Confederate statue. You're just not. I mean, you have both your state senators who are saying the statue should be removed. Your comptroller who's going on record saying the statue should be removed. You have your lieutenant governor who's going on record saying the statue should be moved. I don't see how any reasonable person would think that any public dollar from the Maryland Trust will go towards any rendition of a Confederate statue, no matter how you try to wrap it up.
I think you're correct. I hope you're correct. Richie, go ahead.
Again, what is the message that Talbot County is sending?
Bingo.
That is so important. What is the message that Talbot County is trying to send? Are we trying to say that we want to be classified almost as like sundown towns? I mean, are African Americans not welcomed in Talbot County? What is this government trying to tell us is what I want to get to.
And it seems to me to fly in the face of what we know to be what's real right now. I mean, Corey, you were president of the county council. Yeah. You know, that's the message and your reality are contradictory. Thank God. But still.
And it's a shame, Rabbi. You know, look, I've been interviewed by many publications over the last year or so, and I always have to end up defending Talbot County at the end of the interview, you know, and tell them not to paint Talbot County with too broad of a brush, because there are so many good, honest people here in Talbot County who have worked hard, who will give you the shirt off their back. Sure. And it's so unfortunate that this one plight, this one stain, it has become a megaphone to papers in Philadelphia and New York and Baltimore and Annapolis, that I don't think that some of my council members realize the statement that is being made. I really don't think they realize that.
Yeah, I agree. When the article that appeared in the New York Times, it just blew me away. You know.
Well, and you know, Corey, I will say the only way that they're going to develop that lens is to have conversation with people outside of that don't think like them, act like them, is to have these conversations so that they can get a better understanding. By not responding to email requests to meet is not helping the cause at all. I mean, it's actually doing exactly what we saw on January the 6th. It's creating more of this uprise instead of saying, let's come together and let's have serious dialogue about how we move forward as a community on this particular issue. As small as we are as a county, why isn't that what is the trouble with us making the necessary change so that we can show the world that we have this under control, and here, let Talbot County be the model for how you do this.
Exactly. And move forward. I hope that really happens. I mean, it's important, it's necessary, and let
me share something with you to Richard's point. After my statement in 2015, I drew the comparison in my ignorance, I would say, that the survivors of the concentration camps in Europe, who told the Allies, the Americans and the British, not to tear down those camps. I made the comparison that they wanted those camps to remain open so that the world would see the horrors and the atrocity perpetrated upon the Jewish people by the Nazi regime.
Correct.
I received a phone call sometime after my statement by a person here in Talbot County who was Jewish. And what they told me that I was not getting through my lens, Richard, was that, Corey, they did not want those concentration camps to stay up to glorify the Nazi party, as these statues are. These statues have been placed up after in the 20th century to glorify the Confederacy. That's not the case.
That's correct.
The camps were there as a reminder of the horrors and the atrocities of the Nazi Party. And so I was so thankful that I got that phone call from that citizen, and she was as polite as she could be, and she could have really ripped me to shreds, but she was so polite and to say, Corey, you're missing the point of why those survivors wanted the camps to stay open. They did not want the camps open to glorify what was done to them, but in fact, to point a light to it. Because even decades after the atrocities of World War II, there were still some people saying it didn't happen.
Yes, today even. I mean, we know, and that's a very important point. And I would suggest that that's a valid criterion for moving. One of the criteria for moving the statue as well, not to glorify, but to acknowledge the history. Now, the statue may have been an attempt to praise, but not now. Absolutely. We will talk more about this, and this is not obviously this is not an issue that's going to end with our conversation. But I do want to move on because the time is getting a little slight. Let's talk about COVID in Talbot County by race and age. And Corey, if you want to start on that and give us some information, that would be good.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, right now the Black population in Talbot County is somewhere around 12.8% of the population in Talbot County is made up of African American. Right now, only about 9% of those first doses have gone to African American citizens here in Talbot County as a whole. Dr. McGuire and the health department are trying to find ways to engage the minority in the community even more. Richard, you're probably going to get a phone call pretty soon, so that we can, number one, dispel some of the stigma around vaccinations that unfortunately is very alive in the African American community. We know the history of this country when it comes to vaccinations and the African American community. So we are trying to make those connections to leaders like Richard and certain pastors in the community, so they can speak to their members and say, hey, would you work with us in our messaging? Would you work with us? Maybe even have your picture taken getting your vaccination, or have your picture taken getting a COVID test, because we're trying to work with Matt Peters over at Chest MRC, to work with our Hispanic brothers and sisters to make sure that they are going in and getting vaccinated as well. This is only going to work if we all work together, and it means from the point of messaging through testing through vaccination, we'll be able to overcome this. We're getting some 600 doses weekly here in Talbot County. 300 of those doses are being set aside by the health department for the first shot. People getting their first shot. The other 300 are being sequestered for people who are coming in to get their second shot. So we're making do with every single vial that we get of the vaccine, but we just need help in making sure that messaging gets out, so that 9% can turn into 10% and turn into 11%. So
yeah, no, it's so important. I mean, anyway, Richie, thoughts?
I would agree. I've been talking with my health chair of the NAACP to say, what is it that we can do to mitigate some of the unanswered questions that the communities of color may have around this vaccine. I know that, as Corey mentioned, that we all know the history of what happened with vaccines at Tuskegee and things of that nature. And that's still, a reality for some folks. And there's some, hesitancy about getting this vaccine. So we're definitely willing to work with whomever from the health department to clear up any misunderstanding and to provide clarity so that we can get this vaccine in people, so that we can heed off this COVID-19 pandemic.
I wish it would go away. Everybody should get vaccinated.
It doesn't look like it's going away anytime soon.
No, it's not. And that was just an editorial comment. I'm just, you know.
Well, you know, I will share with you this. You know, our numbers are headed in the right direction here in Talbot County and in Maryland as a whole. Talbot County's case rates are dropping down. Our positivity rates are dropping down. The governor has done, in my opinion, the governor has done an excellent job at communicating and making sure that Marylanders get real-time information, making sure that he hears from the 24 jurisdictions here in the state of Maryland and listen to our concerns as county leaders when it comes to how we are addressing COVID. You know, schools are now open across the state of Maryland, albeit in a hybrid type of a setting. I was on a call earlier today with Mako with Dr. Karen Salmon, and you know, she was sharing with us what has been laid out now over the next couple of months with Maryland school systems. The one thing that I did ask her was how the grading system will be impacted because of COVID. We do know that COVID has been very stressful, not just on us as leaders and as adults, but COVID has been very stressful on our children and grandchildren as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so that will show up in how they perform academically. So my question to her was, how are we going to mitigate that? And she did say that the local superintendents and school boards would have the authority to make those adjustments as they see fit. So probably worth a second conversation with Dr. Griffiths here in Talbot County, just to see how we're going to handle those mitigating factors with our students here in Talbot County.
And I felt so sorry for our kids. I mean, for all of us, but it's really taken a toll on a lot of our kids. And I see it when I interact with our own religious school kids. We only meet twice a month, and instead of going from 9 to 12, we do 10:30 to 12. You know, everything has had to be readjusted. And like I said, I hope we get through with this as soon as we can. So, last question for the both of you. What do you anticipate? What do you look at as our path forward as a county and as a nation? Thoughts and reflections.
So I will start at the local level, because that's the heart of where we are. Yeah. I'm very optimistic. I think, dialogue is happening, though it may not be happening on the grander level. It is happening one-on-one. And I think from those dialogues, there's levels of understanding that is being built. How fast we get there, I don't know, but I'm grateful that the conversations are happening. No. I would like to see the conversations be open to the council. I wish that members of the council would not be so restrictive in who they talk to, but be willing to talk to any groups of people prior to making any resolution or administrative resolution being brought forth, so that you have a good understanding. I would also like to see the council take more of a lead in this. Right now, the conversations are happening organically across the aisle, but I want to see our governmental officials start taking the lead, start jumping into these conversations, and not relying on the people to do it. It bothered me when I got an email from the opposite side telling me if we're going to bring any headway to this, it's going to be us, not our local government officials. And I'm like, wait a minute, then why do we have them in place? If we as citizens have to initiate and start the conversation without our local government officials, what does that say? Yeah. So I really want to see them take more of a role, active leadership role in this, and work with the community in solving this. As it relates to the state, I think the state is probably a little more progressive than the local right now. And they are making good headway. I've, done a couple commentaries where they are now putting all bills through a diversity lens to see whether or not the bill will have an impact, a negative impact on diverse communities, which I think is wonderful. I challenge, our local government officials to look at doing the exact same thing. They have a diversity statement that they approved. I want them to give that diversity statement life. I don't want that to be letters on a piece of white paper.
Yeah.
So, and again, I think nationally, we're moving in a good direction with this pandemic. So I'm very optimistic that we will come out on top as we always have, because we are a very strong and powerful nation when we all come together as one.
Absolutely. Corey?
Yeah, I mean, I can certainly agree with a number of points that Richard made. I'll start from the national level. We're trying to answer the local level. Just do just the opposite. On the national level, I think that we have a new administration that's in place down in Washington. They're within their first 100 days. He wants to put 200 million doses in arms within that first quarter of his presidency. And he's very ambitious and very focused to do that. And look, we have a government the administration of this government is probably as diverse as ever been in United States history. Let's face it. With a number of people of color that he has in places of leadership, number of people who are of different genders in place in leadership for the very first time. Even persons of different sexual preferences in place for the very first time. So I think that, President Biden has started off his presidency in a way that speaks to inclusion, that speaks to diversity, and speaks to all of us, and not just those who are in the red, those who are in the blue. The Republican Party right now is fractured. It is broken. And it has allowed itself to be pulled away by personality and not by principle. And any time you get to a point where you move away from representing the republic, the good for the republic, you put yourself in trouble. Anytime you get away from even doing what's best for the party, you get yourself in trouble. And then when you move towards supporting just a person, you've gone to a place that I don't know whether or not you can recover from in the short run. So right now on the national landscape, we have a party that I believe is fractured, and myself as a Republican, I have not been able to hold my head up high over some of the decisions that some of our national Republican leaders have come to. But then there's others that I will certainly applaud because of their stance and the way that they have stood for the republic first, for the people first, and not so much the person. So I think our path forward will be on a national level is to continue focusing on what's good for the people, what's good for the republic, and not so much for the party, and certainly not for an individual person. I think that's how Germany got in trouble in 1932 when it allowed itself to be pulled towards the madness of an individual.
Absolutely.
So, on the state level, again, I will tip my hat again to Governor Hogan and to the way that he's handled this whole pandemic, even from day one. I've sat on many phone calls with him as council president and heard his plan, his vision for how to go about working together to address COVID-19. He's always been very open in what he was trying to do. Now, and remember, when you're dealing with a virus like this, when you're dealing with a pandemic, things happen, moment by moment, and sometimes the message or the intent of a message can get lost in that translation. So there have been times where we at the local level have scratched our heads and said, well, why did they do that when they should have told us this was coming? But we've always had an avenue of redress. And that's what I really appreciate about this governor, is that even when we may miss the initial point of communication, we've always had a path of redress. Yeah, at the local level, we have a diversity statement, and you all witnessed, what I had to go through even to get that statement approved.
Yep.
And my words then are my words now. The easy part was the drafting and typing it up on white paper. The hard part would now be to live it.
Sure.
Would now be to put action to words. And you don't come out the gate by considering a resolution of a unity statute without bringing together a diverse group of people to give you information.
Right.
Exactly.
You're coming out the gate missing the mark from the very beginning. And I've heard, rumored that members wanted to bring this up and for a vote even without public comment, and which I would have fought tooth and nail against that. You better bet it. But look, we still have some work to do here locally when it comes to the way we deal with the community and being open. I know that there have been council members who have been having small group meetings, and I tip my hat to them. I know there's been council members who've met with leaders one-on-one, although that's a good start. We need to be more transparent in our communication with the public. I have never been one to back down from a microphone, as you know. So if a person want to speak to me, whether it be in a public forum or at the courthouse or or privately, I would do so. As long as there is a working towards an end that will be inclusive of all people, and not just to say that we want to talk to you because we want to pin you down on this.
Right.
If we can't pin you down on this, Corey, then we don't want to talk with you. So, but our path forward has to be on just continue communicating. Understand that we all have our implicit biases, and no matter white, black, Catholic, Jewish, whatever we do. And we need to understand that if we don't acknowledge that, then we open ourselves up to even far worse self-decay.
Well, I want to thank the both of you for being on the Rabbis Roundtable. You have been addressing and sharing with the listening audience, the viewing audience, a number of important issues. This will not be the last time, as I always say, that you guys will be back on the Rabbis Roundtable often to share with us these insights. It's a challenging time we live in, right? And I don't mean to be trite or obvious, but we are living in challenging times. We need, and I agree with the both of you, we need community that is connected. People have a right to understand things as they understand things, but we need the opportunity to share those ideas, to listen, to speak respectfully and listen respectfully, so that we can go from, as they say, from strength to strength. So I thank you both, my guests. Again, neither of them need introduction, but County Council member Corey Pack. Thank you, Corey. And NAACP President Richard Potter. Really appreciate you guys taking the time to be with us.
Thank you, Rabbi.
And we will see you next time, Easton, on the Rabbis Roundtable.